Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. Today I'll be reviewing Boosh! Fulgentius by Cesar Aira, I hope that's how you pronounce it. This is actually a translated work, came out in 2020, but the English translation of it, came out this year. And so, to start with, it's called Fulgentius because that's the main character's name. He's a Roman general named Fulgentius, but every single time, and my wife will tell you, every single time I pick up this book, I have to go, Fulgentio! Fulgentio! Because if you've seen Modern Family, Jay and Gloria's second, or their first child together, Jay wants to name him Joe, but Gloria wants to name him Fulgencio. Fulgencio! Which is the Spanish version of Fulgentius. So all I can hear is Gloria going, Fulgencio, and Fulgencio! Jay being like, we're not going to call him that, we're going to call him Joe. So yeah, I'm going to try to find a clip, but I don't know if I can find it. But every time I say Fulgentius, just know that I'm thinking, Fulgencio! Fulgencio! Without wasting any more time. Let's get down to business. So, Fulgentius is a strange book for me to even review, and I have no idea. I don't even know what I'm going to rate it, and I've started filming the review, and I have no idea what I'm going to rate the book. That's why on Goodreads I haven't actually thrown up a rating for it yet. This book was actually sent to me by Evie, and it was supposed to be a buddy read, but I didn't know that, so I went and read it anyway because it was short. It's like 160 pages, and they're not even like full-length pages. Like, it's a little bitty book. I don't know what to think about this book, guys. So it is about the titular character, Fulgentius, is a Roman general, and he's an aged Roman general. He's like in his 60s, maybe pushing 70 or whatever. And when he was young, when he was a kid, he wrote a play, that is really kind of a send-up or satire of the Greek tragedies, and he just made it kind of about himself, about his life that he hadn't had yet, even though now as a general, it kind of resembles his life because it was him as a successful general and then being betrayed at the end and killed or whatever. So he didn't even know that it had been published until one time he was in the city and saw it was published, and he's like, holy crap, that's my play. Because it's the only play he ever wrote, and he wrote it on a lark just to see if he could. And so now, toward the end of his life, every time he goes somewhere or invades a place, he makes sure to stage a production of his play so he can kind of watch his life or himself on stage. It's very bizarre. So part of the reason that he even wants to be at the head of armies, to go and conquer and subjugate, these people that Rome needs subjugated, is so that he can stage a play. And he just stages various kinds, like professionals or amateurs, and that is a huge part of the book, is Fulgentius's obsession with watching his play unfold in different ways, like which kind of actors make it feel more real, or when it feels too heroic, does it feel less real? It's kind of him living, which is the more real one, the play or his life, and that's really kind of a lot of what this book is about. First of all, the writing is very dense in places and also has kind of a humorous bent to it. Often, reminds me a lot of KJ Parker in some ways. But this book, unlike when I finish a KJ Parker book and I'm like, it's pretty bleak, this book makes me unsettled just about humanity and things in general. This book just feels way more nihilistic than Parker books do. So one of the main themes in this book is civilization versus barbarism and savagery, and I really like those explorations in my books. I read a lot of books recently that are, about that. But also the fact that the outskirts, the fact that Rome, the city itself, one of the reasons that Fulgentius likes to be away from Rome is that in the outskirts, in barbarian territory, it is much easier to kind of live out on the frontier or out on campaign than it is in Rome, because on campaign, he says, who your enemies are. It's very obvious who's trying to kill you. You know what you're supposed to be doing, which is punching that other guy, as opposed to in Rome, where navigating the political, sewer that is the governing system in Rome, where, you don't know if, your friend is actually plotting to kill you. That's all very complicated and very confusing in Rome, where life is just much more simple and simplistic and easier to live when you're out on the campaign. And it also is about, what you're supposed to do when you stop doing the thing that you're really good at. Like, what is Rome supposed to do after it's done civilizing? Like, what comes next? And what are generals supposed to do in polite society? Like, you're a general, you're good at leading troops and punching that guy and being like, boom, you're Roman now. And when all that's over, what real use are you? He doesn't want to write another play because then he's a playwright, and he certainly doesn't want to be considered one of those people. But he does want to see his play and kind of compare it to real life. And there's a lot of existential crises that Fulgentius kind of goes through, and it's told from his perspective, but Fulgentius is just awful. Like, there's just this detachment from the incredibly cruel and savage acts committed by the Romans. He just brushes over them as if they're not important, as if they are inevitable. It's just a matter of course. And why don't the barbarians understand this? And what really needs to happen is we need to get to the city where we can civilize it and I can put on my play. Like, why are these people even bothering to resist the Roman war machine? And so it's constantly, he just accepts this kind of Roman expansion and colonialism and imperialism. Like, that's just the inevitable part of the world, and why on earth would anyone even bother resisting it? And if you're killed, it's your fault, like, for resisting it, you dummies, because you were never actually going to be able to resist it for very long. And so Fulgentius doesn't really ever have any crises of conscience, except when it comes to, like, who he is as a person and what he's gonna do, and he's just arrogant. And he has this one aide that he talks to. He only summons him when he kind of, like, needs to talk out loud and needs someone as a sounding board. He doesn't actually ever listen to him. It's just hard to read at times. And I'll read some passages that I found that I thought are really, really well written, and just kind of give you a feel for the style of this book. Because a lot of times, especially when dealing with the play and the arts and this higher thinking, this book really juxtaposes the sublime with the brutal. Like, these things, like this trying to achieve, like, cultural and artistic heights, it just feels so dissonant right next to the brutality of the Roman legions. So this is a really good passage where it talks about just the onslaught of the legions, and it's just written in kind of like a narrative documentary style. Like the weight of a giant bearing down through ankles and feet of iron, discriminating only between those who did and did not speak the marmoreal language of Latium, the legion traversed the outer ring of the province, crushing all that stood in its way. Massacre followed massacre, like punishments before the crime. Attempts at resistance were uprooted like noxious weeds, but crops and flowers fared no better. The giant's heavy tread was equivalent to the delicate brushing of a butterfly's wing. The damage they did was the same. If a forest got in the way with its hiding places and legends, 1,000 men with axes, or 2,000 or 3,000, depending on the number of trees, would cut it down, pile the trunks into a pyramid 50 cubits high, and set them alight. Juniper wood smoke shrouded the hills like a mist, an incense for which the priestesses of Ephesus would have paid with gold or their bodies. Where the legionaries found towns, they left ruins. Where they found ruins, they marched on, with the nagging suspicion that they had passed that way before. But the suspicion was quelled by an explanation that the legate drafted hastily and had his centurions read aloud. Wandering in circles might occur in a wood, but the woods had been razed, as well they know. That makes me feel bad about just life. Just this complete and utter detachment of, well, Pannonia shouldn't freaking, because that's where they are. They're in Pannonia, which is, they're going to Vindobona, which is modern day Vienna, because it needs to be pacified. And they just, like, mow over everything, and, like, if they passed ruins, they're like, oh, have we been here before? And it's just the lack of any kind of, like, emotional response to the fact that they are just mowing down this other people. Like, it never even occurs to them. And here is again, right next to this is another, like, this is kind of what this book is about. The cruelty that Fulgentius witnessed from the height of his black horse was typical of the period. Acts that seemed wicked now were deemed fitting, required by the realism of the age. Why were the Romans so destructive? Because they were living in the centuries of construction. Nature and civilization were born together in the unknown, and the world was there to be sacked. Indeed, the empire should have destroyed more. It was stopping short. According to ancient wisdom, which the new people had taken up, an active evil was better than a passive good. Good resided in thought, evil in action. Men had to give their worst instincts free rein and prey on each other like wild animals. Evil and good were subordinate to the active and the passive. It wasn't impossible that one day the poles might change places and good take the lead. The doing of evil might even be prohibited. People might come to disapprove of the killing for the heck of it, or the raping for fun, or the burning down of a house with 7 children inside. It wasn't impossible, but the prospect was dispiriting. It's like, just what a sad way of looking at things, and it's like the whole book feels like that. So just be warned that that's kind of like the tenor of the book, and it doesn't really change. You're just looking at Fulgentius's, and even when there are times when Fulgentius kind of aspires to more or something different, reality sets in. It's like, well, I guess I can't do that, or that's not for me. And so it's a very depressing book, but really well written, with some really, really good insights on human nature and the march of progress and colonialism, and just even stuff that doesn't have anything to do with that. Just like insights into, the human mind. At one time, he's writing a letter to his wife, and he's just complaining about his dissatisfaction with life, and he hasn't written his wife in forever, and he's just witching and moaning. And then it says, the following day he felt as if he were emerging from a dream. He couldn't believe he'd written that letter. He felt a satisfaction that his body could barely contain. Alert in all his faculties, he wondered if the key to feeling truly satisfied might be to express one's dissatisfaction so eloquently as to convince other people. I know I've been there. Haven't we all been there, to where the whole purpose of complaining is to make other people agree with how terrible something is? And so he just feels this satisfaction that he's dumped all this dissatisfaction onto his wife, and if she's dissatisfied with life, then you know what? He did a good job. He adequately expressed, and that's again just a terrible way to live. But Fulgentius is a terrible person. Fulgencio. And then one of my favorite quotes in the book is again, this is the truly Roman way of thinking. He's trying to pacify this region and these barbarians, and Fulgentius came bearing a priceless gift, the chance to become a colony of the empire, and instead of giving thanks, they were pelting him with sticks and stones. If only they'd been more receptive, he could have explained the advantages of belonging. Maybe they were afraid of having to pay taxes. True, the Roman eagles were strict about it, but there could be no free entry to the Pax Romana. And besides, they were already spending that much on showy and superfluous trifles. Can't understand. Why on earth you wouldn't want to be part of the empire? Here I am bringing you a gift, and you're attacking me. How dare you, sir? How dare you? And again, we have Fulgentius's just wrestling with wartime just being easier. In war, there's an objective, there's a goal that you're trying to accomplish. What are you supposed to do in peace? Killing the enemy is easy compared to having to have dinner with in-laws, or balancing the family budget, or going to a freaking Senate meeting or something. All of that just sounds tedious and purposeless and pointless compared to the reality of what you're trying to do in war. So there's this constant push and pull between the reality and the imaginary and the transcendent, that and just the mundane that seems so much more than does the clarity that you have when you're killing, savages. He's Fulgentius also thinks he's the smartest person in the room, and doesn't really understand why no one wants to engage him in these brilliant philosophical treatise that he waxes with himself. Fulgentius came to the conclusion that this man had used intelligence as almost no one else had to find out more. It seemed the obvious thing to do, and yet it was vanishingly rare. The vast majority of those with a functioning mind were content simply to be so endowed. They were satisfied with its latent power and feared that activating it might lead to deterioration. They used it only when they had to, for solving problems. And, I like that sentiment of the fact that, what if we used our intelligence just to know things, like, as opposed to just using it like that's my whole theory of education is education shouldn't just be about learning how to do things. It should be about knowing things, learning things to know as well. So that's the one place I agree with Fulgentius on, but not to the arrogant degree that everyone is stupid. I just think that, education should be used to learn stuff. So anyway, so the book is it's just unnerving, which I think it's meant to be. I've never read anything by this author before, but he has won like a ton of awards. Like, I'm not sure I enjoyed my time with the book, even though there are some really brilliant quotes. I think it just makes me uncomfortable, like the mirror that he holds up and his obsession with his bygone days. I don't know. I have no idea. But if any of those quotes sound like your thing, there are so many more. There's like some on every page, and it's very short. And if you like really bleak, like nihilistic feeling books, you should read this book. You don't actually have to know anything about Rome. Like, every now and then they'll use terms that if you don't know them, it doesn't matter. You just brush right past it. But I'm glad I read it. I'm just not sure if I liked it. Like, this is one of these books. You ever read a book where you're just like, I don't think I'm smart enough to really understand everything this book is trying to say? That's how I feel with Fulgentius. And I read other reviews, and they don't help. Like, sometimes, like, if I don't understand, I can read other reviews and people explain, what I didn't understand. I didn't find any of those, which makes me sad. But if you read it and you want to talk about Fulgentius, please let me know. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you at all, I think it's good. I don't know. I know Zara liked it. Zara liked it more than me for sure. But I did enjoy, I don't know. At any rate, there's a book you've never heard of. And so, no one's going to watch this review. So if you made it here to the end, you know what? Good for you. I'll give you a Rebecca as a reward. And perhaps I can't believe it's not butter.
I can't believe it's not butter.
So anyway, guys, that's it for me for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it here to the end. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.